So Black Myth Wukong looks like it's going to be one of the most promising games of 2024. There's so much about this game that looks like it is going to be absolutely amazing. And so today I wanted to go over 7 of the most impressive mechanics they've shown off so far when it comes to Black Myth Wukong. Now the first one on my list here is probably the one that I am the most excited for, and this is the fact that we can actually shapeshift in this game, which is something that I did not know about until I had recently started researching this game for the sake of making content. We hadn't really seen too much of this in any of the gameplay and trailers that they've shown off so far. There is one clip where we can actually see it, which is in the background right now, but they didn't really make it that apparent that we are able to shapeshift into different characters, which is going to be very, very exciting. Now, how this works is that essentially as we beat bosses throughout the game, this can be main path bosses as well as a lot of the hidden or mini bosses that are spread throughout the world. As we defeat those bosses, we will collect their form, which then allows us to shapeshift into those bosses, where we can then essentially use their weapons and abilities. And we obviously look like those bosses as well, although some of them, mostly the larger bosses, I don't think we're going to be quite as big as those bosses, but it's almost like a shrunk down version that's kind of a combination of that boss and Wukong himself. Now, this shapeshifting mechanic, it's almost in line with a sort of ultimate ability type of thing where it's on a long power up, so you can't just use this all the time. Once you've used it, it will take quite some time until you can actually use it again to stop us from spamming it in boss fights and stuff like that. But regardless, I think this is going to be an awesome mechanic, and it's kind of going to make these boss fights all the more exciting because one, when we're fighting these bosses, we can actually transform into a previous boss. But secondly, coming up against a really cool boss, you just know that as soon as you beat that boss, you are going to get their form, and that means that you are going to be able to essentially play as that boss at certain periods throughout the game. So I am very excited to see this in action. I cannot wait to get my hands on it, and like I said, this is probably the most exciting mechanic for me, as this is something that in Elden Ring, for example, with the remembrances, I thought was an awesome mechanic over there as well. Now next up we have self-cloning, and this is the fact that Wukong can essentially cast magic where he then clones himself, as you can see in this clip, sending out what looks like freaking 20 of himself to fight this boss, which just completely distracts the boss and obviously deals a little bit of damage as well. So this is going to be a pretty awesome ability in terms of just actual gameplay, but there is a different reason that I'm actually really impressed by this mechanic. It might seem a little bit insignificant, but it is actually very impressive with how good this game looks graphically, that there's going to be the ability to have that many characters on screen. Generally, games that look this damn good, having that many enemies running around right next to you fighting a big boss with a lot of different effects going on and stuff like that, generally speaking, that does make the game stutter a little bit. It makes games chug along, and that's where a lot of performance issues come in. But from the gameplay that we've seen, it does not look like that is the case at all. It looks like they've got all those characters on screen and there is literally no issue with that whatsoever. And it looks like the game will run really well, which if it can handle those moments, it can no doubt handle the rest of the game very solid as well. So that is another very impressive mechanic that is not only impressive, but like I said, I cannot wait to use this in some of these boss fights. Now, on top of that, we also have a really cool ability, which is the ability to freeze time. And this is going to be an absolute game changer when it comes to those boss fights and generally just any combat at all. As Wukong, like I said, we can essentially freeze time, meaning that any of the enemies in that area will be completely stuck, yet we can move around freely and pretty much continue to deal damage to them or avoid damage if you are really low on health. And it's going to be an absolute game changer when it comes to a lot of boss fights that really could change that encounter and take you from a near death to going on to beat the boss with just the use of one single ability. Now, as far as I know, we haven't actually seen any gameplay of it just yet, but there are journalists who have had their hands on the game already, and they are mentioning that this is able to be done. So I cannot wait to see this in game. Hopefully we get some more trailers and stuff showing this off, as from what I know, we haven't really seen this in any of the promotional materials so far. Now, before we go any further, if you guys are interested in more Black Myth Wukong content and you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. There is plenty more content on the way, both in the lead up to launch and plenty more after as well, so make sure you don't miss out. Now, something else that I am very impressed by is that this game does have a full stance system, which I don't think that many people expected early on. We hadn't really seen anything from this. As far as I know, it was never really mentioned until the last few months, and it looks like it's going to be pretty damn awesome. Now, the first stance that we get, which is essentially the one that we start off with, is called the smash stance. This is pretty much being called the regular stance or the jack of all trades, which is pretty much in most of the gameplay that you guys will be seeing in the background here, as that is, like I said, just essentially the regular stance. Now, the second stance, which has been confirmed, you get at around level 20 unless they end up changing that by the time the game launches. And this one is called the pillar stance, which allows Wukong to actually use his staff in a slightly different way, as you can see in some of this gameplay here, having it extend and essentially climb to the top of it, which not only avoids all damage that would be taken on the ground, but it also gives him a completely different moveset and even gives him a little bit more range as well, because obviously we are playing a game with melee combat. It means that we don't have all that much range to our attacks, but this stance is actually going to change that. Now, as for the third stance, this hasn't been confirmed just yet, not only by Game Science themselves, but even the journalists who have played the game already, they said that they weren't able to try that third stance. So we're not too sure what that is just yet, but we're gonna have to wait and see. I'm sure it is going to be very exciting nonetheless. Now, something else that I think is pretty awesome is that there is going to be a lot of magic in this game as well. We as the player are going to have 4 open slots for magical spells that we can use to enhance our gameplay and our combat. Now, this works on a mana bar similar to Souls-like, so you can obviously run out of mana, and that means you can't use magic until you top that up. And this is to prevent us from obviously spamming it, because I'd imagine most of these spells are going to be pretty damn overpowered. That is kind of the point of them, to help you a lot when it comes to bosses and just general combat. From what those journalists have said, we will be able to pick and choose which 4 spells we want to have equipped. Now, we don't know of too many just yet, but there's no doubt going to be pretty awesome spells just based on everything else we know about this game. So I cannot wait to learn more about those spells. Now, something else that we have seen plenty of throughout the promotional material for Black Myth Wukong is the fact that we can pretty much fly around the map as different animals. In what capacity, I'm not too sure just yet. I'm not too sure if this is like a cutscene type of thing where we still have full control, but it's kind of on rails, or if this is something that we can literally just do whatever we want, which would be pretty damn awesome. Now, the gameplay that we've seen so far, we've seen us flying as both a cicada and a bat, and I'm fairly sure there will be more animals that we can fly around as well. Now, it does seem as though this is more of a cutscene type moment where we'll sort of enter that mode and we will be able to control that animal, but like I said, it's kind of on rails and we're just listening to another character talk and tell us part of the story, something like that. That's what I would imagine this is going to be, but I will say it would be pretty awesome if this is something we can just do at any time to kind of speed up the traversal. But again, I don't think that's going to be the case. Even if it's not though, this does look absolutely amazing, and it kind of shows off some awesome areas of the map in awesome fidelity with some really, really good views as well. So I cannot wait to see a little bit more about what this involves, but it looks pretty awesome nonetheless. Now, the last thing that I've got on my list here is actually pretty similar to that last one, and this is that there is also confirmed to be cloud traversal by a lot of those same journalists who have had their hands on the game. Now, for those of you who have watched Dragon Ball Z, I'm sure you've seen plenty of moments where Goku is able to fly around on the flying Nimbus, which is essentially just a cloud that allows him to traverse the lands a little bit easier. For those who didn't know, that is actually taken directly from Journey to the West, which is an ancient Chinese story that this game is literally based on. That is what Black Myth Wukong is essentially telling the story of. And so that ability that Goku can do in Dragon Ball Z, that is literally the same ability that we are going to be able to do in this game. Now, from what I know, there is no gameplay of this. I've looked everywhere for some gameplay, but I cannot find any just yet. There is this one image of it just here that shows roughly what it's going to look like, but once again, as a lot of the other stuff in this video, this has been confirmed by a lot of those journalists who have had their hands on the game early, saying that this is a really awesome mechanic. And so again, similar to the last one, I cannot wait to see in what capacity we can do this. Is it going to be a fast travel thing, or is this something we can literally just do whenever we want? I'm very excited to find out more. But that is it for 7 impressive mechanics in Black Myth Wukong, guys. I'm keen to hear which of these you are most excited to get your hands on, so be sure to leave a comment down below. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.